Today on the Digital Marketing Masters podcast, science fiction legend Tom Easton.
Editing for amazing tales, an anthology of, you guessed it, amazing tales. Strap in your ears while we hit the road with tales of Galactic Pest Control.
And welcome back to Digital Marketing Masters, everyone. I'm your host, Matt Rouse, and today I'm super excited. My guest is Tom Easton. How are you doing, Tom?
I'm doing fine. You wanted a quick introduction, so I'll just say I'm a retired science professor who's been writing science fiction since the 1970s. And if you take a quick look at the t-shirt I'm wearing, Amazing Selects, run by Steve Davidson and Kermit Woodall, want to celebrate the 100th anniversary of magazine science fiction next year at RavenCon in Virginia. I don't know if I'll be able to make it, but I did buy their t-shirt so I can get in front of audiences like this.
That's right. So Amazing Tales, 100 years now, right?
1926 was when Amazing first published.
Nice. The reason that we have connected is because Amazing Tales has an anthology coming out. Actually, you may not know this, Tom. This was my first submission of a science fiction story that I ever did. And all the books I've written in the past were self-published. So this is the first time I ever asked anybody if I could get my story in their book. Sure enough, I got invited to be in this one.
Well, with your abiding interest in AI, you touched some very interesting bases in that story. Way back when, people started talking about where science fiction might go and where AI might go and whether we should be scared of it. And there were people who were saying, we shouldn't be scared about it because they will regard us as gods, their creators. Right. You may remember reading comments like that. Personally, I think that was an awful lot of wishful thinking because, after all, we don't do a very good job of listening to our gods or agreeing on just which gods to pay attention to.
That's right.
But in your story, you don't go into that very much, but you do mention that the robots should pay attention to the humans because the humans created them.
Right.
That just touches on that very, very old notion. Did you have to resist temptation to dig further into that?
Well, a little bit, but I also didn't want to kind of extend the length of the story too long. I really wanted to try and keep it down to like the essentials.
This is usually a good idea.
I wanted to try and do a little bit of world building in that without getting too extreme. I thought that was a safe bet, and I guess it worked because my story made the book. And I should mention that the book is being published by Amazing Stories, right? And Galactic Pest Control was the theme of the stories for the book. Which is clever in itself. Like that kind of story writes itself, I think. But
well, Steve has been posting things today, making graphics and jokes about the Galactic Pest Control Agency.
Right.
When things are crawling up your pipe, this is who you have to call. And then a link, of course, to the Kickstarter.
It's almost like a spin-off of like Pest Control was Ghostbusters, right?
Yeah.
I remember when the movie came out and I had a conversation with somebody about it, and they were just like, it never occurred to them that I was like, they're making the ghosts out to be like the rats of the sewers in New York City, right? Because they're coming up into the hotels and stuff from the sewers, and they were just like, it never even dawned on me that was how the story came about, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's originally how they made the story, but that was just my take.
I think that even when they did it, they were riffing on something from the past, but I can't remember where the previous incarnation of who you're going to call was.
Yeah, that might be worth digging a rabbit hole on the internet to see if I can find out where that came from.
Well, I think that if you do a search on who you're going to call, you're going to get deluged by Ghostbusters references.
That's right. We'll do like exclusionary search or something, see if we can find out. There's a very clever thing that you can do with the deep research models of AI right now, which is you can say, I want you to research this thing, but I don't want you to include anything about Ghostbusters, right?
Okay.
And then it'll go through and try and exclude anything that had Ghostbusters in it and just research the rest.
The trouble with using AI for research, though, as some lawyers are discovering, when the judge notices the fictitious references in their brief, they're in trouble.
That's right. Well, and you know what? This brings up an excellent topic. And this is something that I've been working on a lot in other kind of science fiction stories. And the novel that I'm working on is the idea that the AI internally, like if you look at how AI systems are developed now, essentially get a reward, almost like a dopamine response when they fulfill the user's query, right? Is the idea is how does the AI solve the problem that you're giving it? How does it find the information? Whatever, there's a reward mechanism in there. And part of the reason they hallucinate is that they're saying, well, I know I don't have the right answer, but I want the user to be happy with the response I'm giving. So I'll make something up that sounds plausible.
Do you remember the old search engine Metacrawler?
I do.
Most people, I think, would say, huh? But that was back when the internet was new, and its
Mhm.
basic gimmick was that it checked multiple other search engines to give
Right.
you results. That's an idea that could actually bear repeating.
It is. I think actually one of the ways now is they call it mixture of experts. And mixture of experts basically is multiple AI systems that fact check each other before it comes up with the result. And another way that it's done is sending a lot of times they call it agentic now, which is just we want to sound fancy word for an AI agent.
Do the shopping for you.
That's right. Well, another thing that they do is they can use them internally. So they can say, okay, well, we have a project for this AI to do. Go out and we're going to send 100 AIs to go do the same task. And then when they come back, they go, okay, well, 60 of them got the same answer. So we're going to say that is likely the best answer.
Oh, democracy.
Right. It's like a democratic answer, but then you use the mixture of experts model to kind of double check and fact check it to make sure what their sources existed and all these things. So there's a lot of ways that they're trying to get that hallucination out of the system.
Yeah.
But it's only on the newest models. So if you're using the free Chat GPT for your law firm, instead of paying the $20, just pay for it. Get the good one.
Well, you mentioned sending out multiple AIs to do the work for you. It makes me think that one AI is very, very expensive in terms of energy, to the point where people are beginning to worry about this very, very seriously. And if you're sending out multiple independent AIs to do things for you, oh my.
Well, so there's another thing.
Get the energy cost down.
And you and I had talked a little bit before we started recording about exponential technologies. One of the things that they found is that there is an exponential decrease in the energy use because of a number of factors, including research and fixing things and being able to determine how much compute they need to do an inference task, which is after it's trained and you ask it something. It's called inference. So the amount of energy needed to do the inference is dropping. And by improving the data they're using to training, they're also reducing the amount of energy it takes to train the model. So be able to train a model that's 10 times bigger than the last model, a year from now, but still use the same amount of energy used to train the smaller one.
Yep. Now, you mentioned the training. That was one of the things that I think you wanted to talk about when we were initially talking about this evening. Have you done the LitGen search on your own work to see how many times your work has been used for training?
I have not.
I have. And basically everything I have ever written, fiction and nonfiction, for 50 years, since long before the internet even, has been processed without any attribution or permission or payment.
Well, I do know that my books were in the Llama one for that training, but I didn't do the full LitGen test.
It's an insidious kind of a thing to do, to check your own work there. One of the things that I find is not really being discussed an awful lot. People talk about copyright infringement. It's not copyright, not really. But copyright law has something else that's also supposed to be protected, and that is the production of derivative works.
Right.
If you train an AI on my 50 years of writing, is that AI a derivative work in the meaning of the law? I don't think
That's-
anybody has asked that question yet.
I mean, that is a good question. I just had an IP attorney on the show like 2 episodes ago. I should go back and ask her that question. We did cover a few things that are interesting, though, and I think one of the most interesting things is that the law is different by country. So if your work has been trained in, been used for training in one country, it might be illegal or it might be a future court battle. But in another country, it might be completely legal for them to trade on your work.
Well, international copyright law is a whole nother thing.
Right.
National is complicated enough.
Actually, on my upcoming book, the Will AI Take My Job Too, I put a passage in the copyright section to say that this is allowed for training purposes for AI models. And the reason I put that in is because that book specifically is going to go out of date really fast, for one thing. But also, I want my view on it to be part of the training data. And so I'm like saying, look, I want my opinions on how this works and stuff to be in the future of the training data. And I also want, if people are looking me up, to be able to find that information in the future.
You were saying before this recording session that you were talking a lot about the impact on jobs and the eventual need for universal basic income.
Yes.
Or it has a couple of other names as well. But among the, that one I think is going to be essential just to keep the economy working. If
Right.
people don't have jobs, they don't have income, they can't spend money, the economy dies. To put it simply, you'll find my discussion of that in the Destinies book.
Right.
But another complication of the rise of the AI and its impact on jobs is identity crises. People tend, at least in this country, I understand other countries it's not so bad, but people in this country tend to answer when asked, who are you? I'm a librarian. I'm a teacher. I'm a whatever.
Right.
You identify in terms of your job. If you can't get a job, what happens to your identity or to your sense of identity? And among the suggestions that I make in my own book, my own essay there, is that you're going to see people looking for various other things, from churches to political parties to causes, increased tribalism. And we are already seeing that in the last few years of politics.
Yeah, I think that's 100% true.
How bad is it going to get?
A lot worse. Sorry, I don't want to speculate, but I am writing a book that speculates about the future of AI.
I'm a science fiction writer. I speculate all the time.
I 100% agree with that.
Does AI create civil war?
Wow, I think the AI might stop civil war.
Another impact that we're seeing, which is more subtle perhaps, is if the AI takes so many jobs, higher education now is extraordinarily vocational. When you and I went to college, liberal arts was the standard mode.
Right.
Since then, even the liberal arts college has added criminal justice programs, child rearing, teaching, counseling, many other things. Well, just a computer science program for that matter. These are aimed at jobs. If jobs are no longer available, why should people pay for vocational training? What happens to the schools? We already have many small colleges that have already closed, and there are other factors feeding into that as well. Families have gotten smaller, so the catchment area for the students has been shrinking. But right now, what we're seeing with the Trump administration is they've got an out-and-out attack on higher education. And you combine it with the big push for AI that they're also going in for, we are going to see some very dramatic changes there.
Yeah, as well as the population decline in most countries in the world.
And when I was writing in Destinies, that book came out 5 years ago. And looking at what's happening right now, a science fiction writer is not supposed to predict the future. In fact, a futurologist really shouldn't be thinking that they can predict the future either. But we can be thinking of, well, yes, we can see certain things trending.
Right.
If this goes on, and if that isn't a classic science fiction line, if this goes on.
Right.
Actually, that's that kind of connects to another anthology I would like to do someday if I live long enough and get a publisher interested. Did you ever read Larry Niven's essay, More Than Story?
I don't think so.
Man of Steel, Woman of Kleenex.
But I'm going to write it down.
You can look that one up. It is a remarkable reductio ad absurdum. And I would love to do an anthology where writers like you, for instance, were invited to take a science fiction trope and beat it into the ground with a big stick. And the title would be,
Right.
Oh, the Absurdity. Does that sound like fun?
I know absolutely, I'm in. But I know I looked that book up, and then of course I got a summary of it because they have AI summary of everything on search now. And I know of the story. It's actually a very common like schoolboy aged story where they say, well, if
it's on the web, if anybody Googles,
if Superman was gonna, go out with a woman, what would happen? Like a human woman, that kind of thing.
He'd be punching. His sperm would be poking holes through everything. She would die of peritonitis.
There's it actually kind of reminds me of an old joke where these guys are like, they go up to like the top of this building with a couple drunk friends or whatever, and the one guy keeps jumping off and flying back up onto the roof, and he says, if you jump in this specific spot,
Superman,
the wind,
you're a mean drunk.
Right. Superman, you're a mean drunk. That's right. So they have the guy jump off the building and execute himself, basically, because it's
all you have to do is believe.
All you gotta do is believe, right? So anyway, I think I do have some contrary opinions about AI that I think are kind of uncommon. I 100% believe there's going to be like job displacement for sure, if not a lot of job loss. I do think there's going to be quite a bit of job creation, but I don't think it's going to be nearly enough to cover the job loss. And also, you can't just reskill somebody into being like a robotics engineer, right? It's not the same as when they went from using, going from.
You have to remember the bell curve.
Right. I mean, they can't even find enough people to do the AI work that they're doing now. So as we train people in very hard, high level mathematics and computer science, I mean, there's a pretty slim picking of graduates that get out of those programs compared to the amount of people who work in like knowledge worker jobs, right?
Did you see the recent news about this company that actually announces, startup actually announces that it is developing AI to do all jobs?
I'm sure. I mean, isn't that what all AI is eventually?
Well, this is a company that says it is explicitly aiming at creating the software that will replace humans in all jobs. Now, there are jobs that they can't replace. Carpenter is hard. Plumber is hard, I
think that those in the kind of, let's call it medium term, right? Like the 5 to 10 year term. I think those jobs will be heavily augmented by robotics, but not like a robot who comes to your house as a plumber. It'll be a plumber who has a tiny robot. He throws down a pipe and it goes and fixes the thing. Or, they
already have robots that will explore the pipes for you and send back
That's
pictures.
Right. So why can't I have one that just goes and fixes the hole in the pipe, right? And, like there's a lot of these robotics and stuff that are already being built, right?
Okay.
And maybe your construction guy has a team of 10 autonomous robots that work with him, but the carpenter is still the one who needs to go, okay, I got to do the fiddly work, or, I got to be the one who makes this decision when there's an edge case of something.
Well, here's another one. How about hairdressers?
Oh, hairdressers is a tough one. And you know what? The thing about hairdressers is if you're a good hairdresser, you're a good hairdresser because of the relationship to your clients, not good because of how well you cut hair.
But the work is also very, very far from routine.
It is.
Which makes it harder for a robot.
That's right. Because there's not enough examples and everybody's hair is different. I think that there's this thing that happens at AI laboratories where they say, okay, we've got 1,000 low-hanging fruit things that we could work with the AI to try and get done, but we've only got enough people to do 10 of them, right? So I don't have enough time to work on hairdresser, because hairdresser, even if you replace thousands of hairdressers, it's still not an economically valuable task compared to
hairdressers
doing.
work for cheap.
Well, it's in comparison to like a pharmaceutical research company, right?
Okay.
So if a pharmaceutical company is worth $3 billion for the new drug, or $30 billion, you got to replace a lot of hairdressers to make up $30 billion, right? I'm not saying they work for cheap. I'm saying compared to that industry, right?
Okay, I put it more crudely than you would.
Right.
But the point I think is valid. The jobs which would not generate so much income for the AI owner are the last to be replaced.
Right.
Your point, in principle, eventually, even those jobs can be done.
I mean,
and this is where we
eventually.
get into the whole UBI thing.
Yeah, I've actually heard it called recently. A lot of people call it BIG, which is basic income guarantee, which is more of an economist term, but same thing. It's paying people money not to work, or work if you want to. Just
Well-
give everybody some money so they can live.
Well,
Right.
actually, the real UBI, Universal Basic Income, doesn't say we're giving you money not to work.
Right.
We're giving you money because the jobs aren't available and we're covering your basic needs. If you
Right.
can find a job that will pay you in addition, that's cool.
I don't think there's anything wrong with a society where I can decide if I want to work or not.
Sure.
Like, that sounds pretty good to me. I think that should sound good to most people. But, there's always people who are like, well, where's the money going to come from? Well, where do you think it's going to come from? You tax the AI companies who took all the jobs of everyone else, right? And whether that happens or not, that's going to be another story.
Yeah.
He wasn't the first person, I think, or the last person to come up with the idea, but my dad used to teach a case in business school that if a company replaces a worker or a shift of workers with an automation system like a robot, they should have to pay the same amount of income tax as those employees would have generated.
Fat chance.
But
you're
of course,
looking all
that
the
never
way
happened.
back- You're
Right?
looking all the way back to CNC.
That's right. So,
For
like,
the novices out there, we should probably say what CNC means. Computer numerically controlled.
right.
And the CNC machines actually would be trained by a human worker guiding the machine's working parts through the task over and over and over again until the machine could do it. And of course, then bye-bye, human.
Right. And now nobody's out there picketing saying, get rid of all the CNC machines, right? Or like,
Right.
we brought out a train, so now 100 people don't have to drive cars or horses across the country to deliver packages, and nobody's out there picketing trains, right? And what happens is, with each kind of technological push, there's pushback at the time, but each kind of advancement does still have displacement. But I think the biggest difference here is the displacement hasn't been between taking a worker and retraining them for a different trade or skill that is, reasonably easy to retrain for. It's
In my teaching career,
it might remove their job completely.
the college actually would take money from the state to run retraining programs for people that were being left unemployed when the mills in Maine closed.
Right.
In Waterville, Maine, there was a big Scott paper plant, for instance. You could tell you were in Waterville by the smell of sulfur dioxide. But that closed down, and the state said, well, okay, we have to retrain people. Let's put some money into this. And I think there's a lot less of that available now.
There is. And I think that also depends where you are, right? Like, I think there's quite a bit of that still in some countries. I know Canada has quite a bit. When I lived in the United States, I noticed that it wasn't as much of a thing. Like, it was more of a, we'll give you a loan so you can go back to school versus like, we'll pay you to be retrained for a new job.
Well, in some countries, the whole retraining or even the initial training thing, college, is free.
Right.
It's like public education.
Yeah, they're doing some of that here now with medical staff, because we're completely understaffed in the medical system. and they're like, okay, well, we'll pay for your school, but you have to sign a contract that you're going to work with us for so many years after you get out of school.
Yep.
Which I think is fine, you know.
Well, and that's one of the things that Trump has been killing. There were programs like that with the federal government. We will fund your education and you will work with, say, on an Indian reservation or in a park or someplace for 10 years to work it off.
Right.
No more.
Yeah. Well, there's definitely a lot of stuff going on in the United States politically right now that I'm not a huge fan of. I mean, I'm not even going to visit like the conferences I usually go to in the United States just because I don't want to get hassled when I go to the border, you know, because I'm not a US citizen.
If you start
Right?
saying bad things on something that's going to be posted in public, we could both get in trouble, I suppose.
That's right, Tom. Stop getting me in trouble.
I'm too old to worry about the trouble. My
That's
wife won't
right.
let me get into it.
With some of the time that we have left, I do want to ask you a couple questions. So the anthology is Tales of Galactic Pest Control. It's on Kickstarter, so people can go. I think it's like $12 to get a digital copy, $30 if you want a paperback.
You can back the Kickstarter for basically what you would spend pre-ordering a book on Amazon.
That's right.
So why not?
But there is a lot of stories in this book. I think there's what is
Well, I
there
just
40
added
some?
one more by Stephen Silver, and that takes us up to over 30 stories, which is going
Nice.
to be expensive for the publisher. They really got their hopes riding on this Kickstarter.
That's right. As you being the publisher.
You and I don't have to fit the bill.
Right. So besides my story, which is the obvious choice, what do you think your favorite story in the book is that you've read so far?
Oh, I'm not going to even try.
Oh, come on. You don't want to be like all my kids. I love them all equally.
Well, I have to talk about yours because there you are right there in front of me. And we've already done that. There are others. Well, let me say it this way. Every story is one that I liked.
Right.
Many, many more stories were rejected. And some of them somebody else might have liked. But I said, nope, doesn't do it for me. Right now, when somebody says, can I send you a story? I'm saying the book is just about full. You can send it. I'll look at it, but you have to knock my socks off. And when it comes time to reject one, I say, sorry, my socks are still on.
That happens. I mean, you've been editing for like science fiction books and magazines for decades at this point.
I haven't
right?
edited magazines, but I've done what? This is the 11th or 12th anthology, dating back, I think the first one was dated 1997.
And you guys are paying the authors of the stories, which I know sounds to most people sounds like, well, why wouldn't you pay them? But if you look at the publishing world as it sits right now, especially for short stories, there's not a lot of people paying anything for anything.
Well, I've done 3 anthologies for Ian Randall Strock's fantastic books. The first one was Science Fiction for the Throne, One Sitting Reads. And the idea was to get stories under 2,000 words, preferably reprints, and put about 40 of them in the book. Obviously, it's a bathroom reader. When that was launched, people were picking up 3 and 4 copies at the con, and obviously planning to give copies to their friends. Then we did Fantasy for the Throne, and then we did Horror for the Throne, with the inevitable joke about it will scare the something out of you.
Right.
These things write their own jokes.
They do. They write themselves sometimes.
And now Ian has actually given us a story for this anthology. So I think Turnabout there is fair play. He's been my editor. Now I'm his. But I've also known him a lot longer than that, even before Fantastic Books. He used to work for Analog at one point. Anthologies give me some editing experience. I've had co-editors. That's usually a way to help cut the work. I've also learned that one of the easiest ways to do an anthology, and that's the way David Hartwell used to do it, was to go to a large con and walk through the dealer room and glad hand people and say, I have a sandbox. You want to play?
Right.
And with the Galactic Pest Control, here's a sandbox. You want to play? And we have had a lot of good people say, yeah, sure. And I think that when the book comes out, it's going to be a very good one.
Yeah, I'm excited actually. I'm excited to read everybody else's story and see what their take on the same idea was. I think that's also one of the exciting parts about having like a theme with so many different people is everybody has their own, like when they hear something, they have their own kind of twist and take on it. And
This is one of the things that makes it difficult for people to squeeze in at the end because they might be too similar to something you've already accepted.
right. Well, hopefully nobody's too similar to mine.
Well, like I say, at the end, you have to blow my socks off.
On the AI front, I know that we did talk a bit about, AI and the potential of job loss and things like that. Do you see a possible future where there is some kind of like greater good that comes out of AI rather than just everybody's going to lose their job and nobody has any money?
Well, we tend to focus on those impacts that pose problems. But I did a story that explored some of this. It appeared in Black Cat Weekly a year ago. And basically, what it said was that once you start having to face the identity crisis thing that I mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
you need to find something else to do. So we have a future in which people have battles of the bands in the streets, saxophones against
Right.
bagpipes. You could really get into that.
Right. Well, if you got time.
You don't have anything else to do, so why not learn an instrument?
Well,
You know?
I
And you can also do the whole what is it? The anachronism people who do jousting and so forth.
right. I was going to say, what would happen to the world if the starving artists didn't have to be starving? Suddenly they could actually
Basic income.
do their work, right? And
Well,
I live in an artist community, so
Well, some artists would say, that's cool. I don't have to worry. I can just concentrate on building this one massive masterwork. And some people manage to do that anyway. I mean, you think
Right.
about, what is it, Barcelona with that cathedral?
Mm-hmm.
And then you have a whole lot of other people saying, oh, I don't have to be so goddamn obsessive. And they take a nap.
Right. They're like, I don't have to I can focus on what I want to do for work instead of making 17 pottery cups a day to put food on the table.
Yeah.
Where how many paintings do I got to sell this month to keep my kids in school?
My brother was an artist. He died over 20 years ago, but he was a sculptor, painter.
Mhm.
His name was Walter Easton. You can look him up. Perhaps the best thing that you can find is a movie that he made with the head of the art department at Colby College up in Maine. And it was up here. I think that's it. Deep Trout is the name of the trilogy. I have it
Okay.
here on a DVD. It can be found online. And he had the kind of artist ego that said he didn't need to sign his work because everybody should know it was his.
Right. That's Deep
That's,
Trout.
to my mind, a little extreme. I'm not a credit hog. I'm willing to share, but I do want my name on it.
Right.
I think you do too. Deep Trout was an obvious play on words. At the time, Deep Throat was in recent memory.
Right.
And he did some very, very interesting sculpture. A lot of it is showcased there, but he never made any money. One problem was that he had some things that could easily have been not exactly mass produced, but at least cranked out with variations. Small sculptures that might have qualified as motel art. He could have sold a ton of them, but that was beneath him. This is the kind of thing AI specializes in. Oops, I shouldn't say things like that.
Yeah, I mean, if it's something that is repeatable and has some sort of kind of guideline structure to it that could be, even with modifications, but still repeatable, well, that's definitely something in the AI, frontier. I think people are gonna really quickly start to look at some of the stuff that's come out really recently, like Claude 4 just came out from Anthropic, and it can work autonomously on things. Honestly, I was looking through something today, and it didn't know the answer, like in its own training data. It like admitted, it was like, well, I don't know the answer to that, so I'm going to go look it up. And then it went and looked some stuff, and then it told me what it looked up, and then it gave me the sources of where it looked it up from. And it did all that without me having to ask it, well, go look it up or go do that. And then there's like VO3 just came out from Google, which you can type in a text prompt and it will make HD video. It keeps the characters and it makes the audio as well. So it lip syncs to the people's voices and things like that. It is essentially indistinguishable from, well shot video. I think this generation of stuff that's out right now is indistinguishable from human made content for people. And the next generation is better than human content, which better is and how do you measure better? Right? Is the thing. Like you can tell if it's better at math than it was before, but you can't really tell if it's like more of a creative writer than it used to be. So some things are a bit squishy.
If we can get the AI to the point where it doesn't hallucinate, I'm not sure I like that particular term, but you know what I mean.
Right.
If we can get it to the point where it doesn't do that, and if it's doing a search and it comes up dry and it says, I will look that up instead of manufacturing it,
yeah, we're pretty much there.
That's very useful.
Yeah, we're there now. It's just only on the cutting edge models.
And if we have an AI that says, oh, yes, I can work with your drafting machine to generate a file for your 3D printer, that will be pretty cool.
Yes. There's
Actually,
a program
called might be cooler than the real thing.
There's a program called Mesh. It's an AI 3D model creator.
Yeah.
So I mean, here's the thing. It's like there's so much out there now, and it's being developed so quickly by so many different people, and it has so much money behind it and so much momentum behind it that it's gonna get better at a pace that people can't comprehend. And
as I was saying about wetting the bottom of Lake Michigan.
That's right.
Exponential growth can fill the lake up in a hurry.
Yeah, my dad used to have this thing that when he was teaching, and he would say if the amount of lily pads on the pond doubles every 3 months,
yeah,
and
or the classic chess puzzle from India. Right? How should I pay you? Oh, just put 1 grain of rice on one square, 2 grains on the next, 4 on the next,
and double it on every square.
Bank pick up the Raja.
I used that analogy in my book of Will AI Take My Job? And on the last square, it would be a pile of rice the size of Mount Everest if each grain of rice was the equivalent of every grain of sand on the earth.
Every equivalent of what?
Every grain of sand on the earth.
Yeah.
So it would be so big, it would be bigger than the planet, basically.
That's the whole point. I mean,
right.
The whole thing of exponential growth, this is one of the classic examples. And it was a sucker punch for the Raja who made that stupid offer. And it has been proposed in various other forms as well, though I think mostly as illustrations rather than actual history. I don't see anybody actually buying into it. And how long would it take the Raja, after all, to say, off with his head?
That's right. Well, everybody out there, start counting your rice, because the current model of AI is doubling currently every 7 months.
Every 7 months.
Every 7 months, it's doubling
like I said,
in power.
With Lake Michigan's bottom.
That's right.
Yeah.
I was talking to a guy who had a company. I said, how long do you think it's going to be before AI can do what your company does? And he said, oh, it's at least 3 generations. I said, well, the next generation's coming out next month. So that means you got a year and a half until it can do what your company does. And he's like, shit. And I'm like, this is why we need to think, right? We need to think about stuff in advance. We got to go, look, if this got better that quickly at this thing, what would it mean for me and my job or my family or, my business or whatever it is, right?
Well, the distance this has all come in my lifetime. I told you earlier before we did this. My AI exposure goes all the way back to the McCulloch-Pitts artificial neuron. That was dated to the 1950s. In the 1960s, there was the perceptron.
Mhm.
This is when a mini computer was the size of a refrigerator, the PDP-8, PDP-10. They didn't have microcomputers yet, but the perceptron was a small neural net, and it could already do some very interesting things, like checking credit card fraud. And it was forgotten because it was so small and so limited.
Right.
And then 20 years later, people started talking about this hot new thing, neural nets.
Right.
I think it was 20, it might have been 30, but it was abandoned for a long time to the point where most people don't even recognize the term perceptron anymore. Do you recall it?
I don't. The only reason I know of it is because I did the research for the book of where did kind of
Okay.
AI get started, right?
It's out there, but things have come a long, long way in one man's lifetime. What happens in the next lifetime?
It's true.
Whoa.
Yeah. Well, and you talk about abandoned technologies, like the LLM was essentially the pre-trained transformer was an abandoned technology, right? Google invented the transformer. They built it and they said, this is a dead end. There's nothing we can do with this. And then, OpenAI's researchers kind of said, look, Ilya Sutskever was like, I'm going to pump a ton of data into this thing, of this data set that I have. Everybody was on reinforcement learning. And as soon as the large language model came out and went crazy, everybody started building them. But now they're going back and using the reinforcement learning on top of the large language model. And now they're getting these results that are just incredible, like, multi-layered brains and circuit design and synapses.
The term small language model yet? I think maybe. I have. Meaning basically not so extensive on the training.
That's right.
It's going to have to get there. And then we have the whole issue of embodiment.
Mm-hmm. Embodied robots and
a humanoid AI and raise it like a child. There's been a certain amount of science fiction that has dealt with that.
You know what's funny? My novel that I'm writing is called AGI Next. I'm currently on chapter 23, so I'm working my way. I don't know how long it's going to be though. But the idea in my book is that there is an AGI system who also has an embodied robot of itself who is raising a human child. So it's kind of the reverse.
Do you think we've given people enough keywords now?
No, I haven't said edge case more than twice, I think. So well, that's my buzzword of the day.
I did talk in Destinies about the impact on education. As education becomes more vocational, the jobs become fewer. Boom, there goes higher education.
Yeah, well, I mean, I know a lot of people who taught. My uncle and my parents all taught in higher ed. It's quite a thing. I mean, I talk about education in the book, but I mostly talk about, what are you going to do in the next few years, not what are you going to do 10 years from now,
okay.
But hey, you know what? I don't want to cut it too short, but I don't want people to have to spend 3 hours in their car to listen to our whole talk here. So I think maybe we should.
Over your time limit.
That's all right. It's okay. It's an artificial time limit until the AI imposes it on me.
I'm having fun, but if people expect a half hour or 45 minutes, and here it is, 5:15 almost.
Right. We're almost an hour in.
Plug for the Galactic Pest Control Anthology, and there's the link for the Kickstarter there in the private chat.
It is. I'll put it in the show notes for the show, and we'll share it out.
While I'm at it, I should plug the 5-year-old book Destinies: Issues to Shape Our Future, which has obviously dealt with some of the things we've been talking about.
Absolutely. And Tom, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's so exciting to talk to another science fiction writer, especially somebody as accomplished as yourself. And I really appreciate it. And again, it's Tales of Galactic Pest Control, a sci-fi anthology. It is on Kickstarter right now. Go back real authors doing real work, and some of us talking about AI, but not everyone. And
Matt will get paid double for his story.
Right. I'll be getting paid twice of what I put into the Kickstarter. Yeah,
It
it's
has
not
been a
about the
pleasure.
money, honestly. I love writing, and I was so excited when I got Kermit sent me the acceptance email, saying that we think it's gonna make it. And then I finally did, and it was great. So I appreciate you guys.
Okay, it's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Tom. And man, we'll have to talk again soon when the next book comes out.
Where are you located?
I'm in Nova Scotia.
Nova Scotia. Do you get to cons in the U.S.?
I have sometimes. I used to live in Oregon, but I have not recently
Okay.
because we moved
have
up here at COVID.
My
so-
next one will be ReaderCon in Burlington, Massachusetts, which is not too far from you.
That's right.
From Nova Scotia, you can actually take the ferry and drive. A few years back, my wife and I took that ferry from Bar Harbor and drove all the way out to Halifax, and
Yeah.
it was interesting. The idea in Nova Scotia of an overpass is particularly interesting. It's a stop sign.
That's right. Well, the Bar Harbor ferry goes to Yarmouth, which is about an hour drive from my house. But I live kind of in the middle of nowhere, but they call it the cradle of civilization in Canada because I live on the oldest road in North America. So I live on Granville Road, that's something like 400 years old. And
I have ancestors that went to Nova Scotia as Tories at the time of the Revolution.
Oh yeah, they probably live in Bear River.
After everything settled down, they came back.
Right.
But
I was going to say all
I
that.
think they went to Lunenburg.
Oh yeah, I know Lunenburg. It's just across the province. I got to drive across, but it only takes an hour. It's kind of like a peninsula here. Tom, I appreciate it, and we'll talk again soon. And let's hope Kickstarter goes well, and then
It's off to a good start.
and then we'll have to get on to the next one.
Thank you for listening to the Digital Marketing Masters podcast with your host, Matt Rouse. If you enjoyed the show, please leave us an honest review on your favorite podcast app. Be sure to check out Matt's book, Will AI Take My Job? And have a wonderful day.